The central premise of my writings and research has been that the ancient texts bequeathed to us by the Sumerians, the Egyptians, and other peoples of ancient times, including those who compiled the Old Testament, are not mythology, but really are records of things that actually had taken place. And the main theme of what the ancient peoples have told us in their writings is that all the knowledge, what we call nowadays science, technology, they called it knowledge. They said all that we know, all our knowledge was given to us by the Anunnaki. The term in Sumerian meant those who from heaven to earth came. And therefore, in order to understand the so-called ancient myths, which I take as factual records, one has to factor into the ancient past of our planet and of mankind the acceptance as a reality that people from another planet, much more advanced than us, had come to Earth starting about 450,000 years ago, coming and going between Earth, our planet, and their planet, which was called Niburu, every 3,600 years. And every 3,600 years, when they found mankind worthy of more knowledge, of more technology, more science, more advancement, they gave it to us. And that was the basic premise of all the ancient writings. Now, one could, of course, talk for hours about what the ancient peoples had really known. And if you want to expand the meaning of knowledge and technology or science, not just to physical objects, but to knowledge, for example, of astronomy, of the heavens, of how the outer planets look like, of distances between the planets, and so on, then I devoted 7 books to that, the latest of which is Divine Encounters. And it deals actually with the aspect of technology about which I would like to say a few words. And that was that if Earth was indeed visited by astronauts, by people from another planet, they had to use a means of transportation, space vehicles. They had to have a means of landing on Earth and taking off back to their planet. And according to my findings, based on all the evidence from antiquity, their spaceport after the flood, after the Great Deluge, was in the Sinai Peninsula. And I have provided in my books the layout of the spaceport. The landing corridor was anchored, as always, even before the flood, on the twin peaks of Mount Ararat.
Hold on 1 second. I'm just getting your...
I'll backtrack a little. In order to come and go between their planet and our planet, they had to have space vehicles. They had to have a spaceport where to land and from which to take off. And my findings were that after the deluge, the Great Flood, the spaceport was in the Sinai Peninsula, right here. And the landing corridor, as before the flood as well, was anchored on the twin peaks of Mount Ararat, was anchored on 2 artificial mountains, which we recognize today as the 2 great pyramids in Giza. So they are part of ancient technology. And the explanation how they were built, by whom they were built, is referring back to the Anunnaki. And Jerusalem was a mission control center. And this is the subject of further research, which I hope will be convincing. Now, they incorporated in this landing corridor a huge platform that has existed from before the flood, about 500,000 square feet of solid stone, strong enough to sustain heavy weights dropping down and maybe lifting up. And around 2900 BC, a Sumerian king called Gilgamesh, whose epic is very well known even to high school students nowadays, went in search of immortality and was told by the so-called gods that if he wants to attain immortality, he should first go to the landing place from which their rockets ascend and descend, and that's how he could join them on their planet. Now, he describes in the Epic of Gilgamesh how he actually saw at night a rocket ascend from that platform. Unfortunately for him, he was unable to enter the forbidden place, and he went back disappointed. But he did describe seeing a rocket rise from that place. That place still exists. It is nowadays called Baalbek in the mountains of Lebanon. The platform still exists, but what stood on it does not exist. However, we are fortunate to have a Phoenician coin from a city called Byblos, from which the name Bible comes, by the way, and it shows what did stand on that platform. A rocket ship on a kind of a base surrounded by a certain wall or fence that is very much akin to the fencing around our modern spaceport that absorbed the exhaust from jet planes. And I'm sure that the viewers will see that. Now, frustrated in here in Baalbek, Gilgamesh continued his journeys in search of immortality to the actual spaceport, which in the text, in the Sumerian text, is called the place from which the rocket ships ascend and descend. Now, that spaceport does not exist because it was wiped out in a war between clans of the Anunnaki that even led to the use of nuclear weapons about 4,000 years ago, which is the biblical tale of the upheavaling of Sodom and Gomorrah. But again, we are fortunate to have this depiction by the Egyptian governor in pharaonic times of the Sinai Peninsula. In his tomb, after he died, his, if you want to call it his biography, his achievements during his lifetime were depicted on the walls. And when it comes to describing his governorship of the Sinai Peninsula, this is what was shown. You see here the level of the ground, because you see here trees and giraffes, etc. And then you see an underground silo with what certainly looks, at least to me, as at least a two-stage rocket ship with the command module, very much like our early command modules that splash down in the waters above ground. So if one says, what did the ancients know by way of technology? They knew in many sciences much more than we even know today. Indeed, in one of my books, Genesis Revisited, the publisher subtitled it, "Is Modern Science Catching Up with Ancient Knowledge?" But I think these few illustrations suffice to say that they had witnessed and were aware, perhaps of what today we would call UFOs, but definitely craft that were able to ascend into the heavens and to come down from the heavens.